My name is Scott Leventhal. I'm the president and CEO of Atlanta-based Tivoli Properties, Inc. Tivoli is a developer of high-rise condominiums, apartment projects, mixed-use projects, subdivisions, both infill subdivisions, lifestyle communities, and entry-level communities. I appreciate the time to speak to this committee and would note that we're all here today because the world has been turned upside down. And by turning the world upside down, there's obviously some fallout and things that should be reviewed and addressed. As an Atlanta-based developer, I'm particularly affected by the fact that Georgia has seen more bank closures than any other state in the country. For me, that has resulted in multiple banks being closed, the assets of those failed banking institutions being transferred through whole bank purchase and assumption agreements where the FDIC will backstop the losses sustained on those loans through a loss share, through structured transactions with private partners, multiple partners, as well as directly liquidated from two private investors. The subcommittee and the prior witnesses talked previously about the methodologies and how these loans are liquidated and transferred, and it's important that we do analyze that. The whole bank purchase and assumption is a situation where the FDIC is capable of taking all the assets of a failed banking institution and transferring those assets to a financially solvent institution. That institution doesn't get to choose the good or the bad. They take the loans, they work the loans out. The loans that are unable to be sold through whole bank purchase and assumption end up in these structured transactions. The primary difference between these two methods of liquidation is when a bank fails and an acquiring bank purchases the assets, the borrower is dealing with a bank. When a bank fails and the FDIC is incapable of selling those assets to another acquiring bank, they end up in the hands of a private partner. And in most instances, that private partner is a direct competitor of the borrower. These structures provide, as previously discussed, management fees to be paid on the unpaid balance of the loans. They also provide for interest-free financing for a significant term. Further, something that has not been addressed in this hearing is that these structures actually have a disincentive for the private partner to perform, meaning that for the private partner to liquidate the assets in the structured transaction, they will get to a point to where the profits that are being split between the private partner and the FDIC will actually increase to the FDIC and decrease to the private partner, thereby diluting the amount of asset management fees that are available to be collected. If you have 7 years, why finish anything? Why liquidate? Why deal with it? Another matter which has been touched on today is when a bank fails and the FDIC comes in and takes over the assets of the failed institution through receivership and elects to not fulfill the obligations that are required under the loan agreement. That issue has a very specific legal term. It's called repudiation. Now, the consequences of repudiation are very significant. In many instances, borrowers have borrowed monies for the purposes of constructing projects. Depending on what point in time the assets or the bank fails, that borrower may be subject to repudiation. And the FDIC, because of other problems the bank may have, will elect not to proceed forward. Many borrowers around the country are facing this issue, and it is resulting in very dire consequences and dire situations. Now, the acquiring bank or the private partner through the structured transaction also then has the opportunity to pursue the borrower, pursue the guarantor for the full amount that's been drawn, except for the lender failed to perform. They repudiated. It's interesting that the rules are written in pencil in some instances. I think that the subcommittee should take consideration in the fact that structured transactions are important. They're important to the FDIC's ability to liquidate assets. But what we need to do is we need to resolve the issue where direct competitors are coming in and they're being given access to private borrowers' financial information. It creates an unfair advantage, particularly when the federal government assists and is driving competition out of the marketplace. Tremendous litigation is ensuing around the country, and while many borrowers have the rights under the Federal Bankruptcy Code to seek some sort of debtor protection, they should not be forced to if the opportunity exists to work those loans out. I'm moving very quick. I had one last point, Mr. Chairman. If you wouldn't mind my indulgence, I see the clock has changed. Something is very important that we recognize in a lot of litigation which is going on around the country while structured transaction partners are seeking to recover and get judgments on the obligation, meaning the note and the guarantee, without first foreclosing on the property or the collateral that secures the loan. You see communities all over, particularly in Georgia, wasting. And that means that the surrounding properties have severe effect from the fact that the neighboring property is just wasting away because a dispute is going on between two different parties and it's unrelated. So Mr. Jones, who lives in a home that is right next door to a partially developed house or partially constructed house where the FDIC has come in and repudiated the loan, a successor has then come in and wants to litigate for the amount of that debt. That homeowner living next door's appraised value is declined. They can't get new financing. That borrower is now upside down.